So Wild Five Wellness really is a proven path to wellness. It's one of three evidence-based programs that are available. And it's a project that's been near and dear to our hearts for probably 15 plus years. We've been researching it in a variety of different populations over the last almost 10 years now. So we've looked at the benefits of behavioral changes, a 30-day program where we have wellness enhancing practices like 30 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of mindfulness, optimize sleep, so utilizing sleep hygiene practices, increased social connectedness, which comes as no surprise, and then optimized nutrition. And that one has a lot of questions around it. So the optimized nutrition is simply teaching about clean, unprocessed foods, healthy eating. But what it requires from participants is simply keeping a food log. So honestly, being more mindfully aware of what they're consuming, which kind of links back to the 10 minutes of mindfulness a day. So there's a little bit of overlap, if you will, between those 5 practices. Then we also ask participants once a day to answer 2 HERO questions. HERO is an acronym that we created for really psychological, positive psychology traits, really foundations of wellness: happiness, enthusiasm, resilience, and optimism. And those questions help the participants just to spend a little bit of time, maybe 3 minutes a day, just considering things that make them happy, where they see themselves as optimistic, to give you some idea. So there's behavioral interventions as well as positive psychology traits. And the data to this point, David, really quite remarkably across all populations. So whether it's healthy community participants, whether people with mental health challenges, chronic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, healthcare practitioners themselves, which really speaks to our audience that we're talking with today. The findings have been very consistently the same. Improvements in depression, anxiety, sleep, mindfulness, cognition. We figured we had a bit of a captive audience with all of these groups in the studies. And so we just threw a very broad net to measure pre-post those 30 days as many items as we could. So that's sort of the program in a nutshell. But to answer, I think, your question and what might be of most interest to the participants in this class would be, okay, so how does this fit in with me as a therapist and the people that I may be working with? What we are convinced of, we're about to launch a new interventional study. We're waiting for IRB approval. But what we are hypothesizing is that during that afterglow period, that period after psychedelic use, where we read about it in the literature as afterglow, greater neuroplasticity, greater psychological flexibility, all the things we want for the people we work with, is that if we can introduce wellness enhancing behaviors as well as positive psychology ways of thinking about ourselves, our relationship with the world, with other people, our coworkers, right? The list is very long. That if we can introduce that within 2 to 3 weeks following a psychedelic experience, we're hoping we'll see exactly the same things that we've seen in other Wild 5 studies: improvements, depression, anxiety, wellness, all the things I mentioned before. So I would see the program as a great add-on, if you will, to the integration part of the psychedelic process. That would be something that clinicians could offer, therapists could offer to those people they're working with and say, this is something you might want to consider. And you could actually introduce it during preparation so that they could go ahead, go to the website, get all set up and be ready. So once they've done their journey and they've begun their work with the therapist in integration, they could then get ready to start within a couple of weeks, or really actually as soon as they would want to. The $1 million question, right? I mean, when you look at these new companies that are starting, I mean, they're creating molecules that actually remove the psychedelic experience, right? And I mean, when you listen to their reasons why they're doing that, okay, maybe. But for those of us who really believe in the positive impact of a mystical experience, or just the psychedelic, even if you didn't have a mystical experience, just that journey that we describe as the psychedelic journey, I'd be hard pressed, at least as an N of one, as a clinician, to say, we don't need that, let's remove it. I lean way towards the side that says the psychedelic experience is critically important. But I have to be honest. I mean, we all talk about the data should lead our steps, guide our decisions, and we just don't know from a data perspective what the answer to that question is. But I will tell you, in most conversations, when that gets tossed on the table, there can be some heated exchanges over keep it, don't need it. It's not critical to, it is the ultimate in the healing process. You know, that whole idea of inner healing, inner wisdom, the body's ability to heal itself. In some ways, if we remove that psychedelic experience from the journey, I wonder what we would lose in that process. For me, that integration piece, you know, I had the just absolute pleasure at Catalyst last year to be able to speak on the importance of integration. I think the next to last slide, somewhere at the very end, I said it's the meaning making. That's where it's that integration where we cement those puzzle pieces into a beautiful jigsaw puzzle, right? It's that last piece that gets clipped into the jigsaw and you're like, oh my God, it's beautiful. That's where we create the meaning. And so it seems that integration is the perfect place because people are just more open in that afterglow. There's less rigidity around. As an example, if I try to introduce exercise to someone, we all have our beliefs and our biases for and against exercise. The biggest con is I'm just too busy, right? My schedule's too busy. I don't have time for that. No, can't do that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, and I've said that myself when my healthcare practitioners have said, hey, why don't you add a little bit of exercise? Oh, you don't know, I'm so busy. But in that afterglow where we are just more open, we're more connected, there is that sense of, I think, honor and recognition of our physical bodies, not only our spiritual self, but, you know, I heard somebody say the body is what carries the spirit around while we walk through Earth School. And I just thought that was so beautiful. So how do we honor that? And I really believe, and my experience has borne out, that not 100%, but a very large percentage of people who have these psychedelic journeys simply listen, have more curiosity, a more open heart, and seem more receptive to these ideas of wellness enhancing behavior changes or how we engage with the rest of the world. So it seems like, again, I don't have data to prove it yet, but it seems like based on our experience over the last 10, 15 years researching Wild 5, it makes sense to have that as part of, you know, how we take the psychedelic experience and really integrate it into our day-to-day lives. How do we make those changes and sustain those changes?